Hello, viewer, wherever you are. I trust God is keeping you well. This is Louis. Thank you for taking time to keep me company for a while. I'm surprised we live in a country now where the word normal, the English word normal, just as you know it, has a new meaning. Normal now means different things. It is normal for people to insult the office of the president. It is normal for people to insult parliamentarians. It is normal to tear gas minors. It is normal for traffic to hold up for 3 to 4 hours. These are the things that are becoming normal in this country. It is normal to talk about abductions. It's like a line of speech. In fact, people get bored when you mention abductions, except for the ones directly affected. So how did we get to a place where we become a country where we've normalized things which are actually abnormal? How did we go down to that level? I'll try and interrogate that with a fine gentleman who is joining me today, Willis.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you for coming. I have seen you introduced in very many different spheres, having done very many things. So maybe I'll allow you to tell the viewers, how did you suddenly come on the scene? Because you've not been here for maybe longer than most can remember.
I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a champion of the rule of law. So I'm more known in the court corridors. But as you've said, we have a new normal that is not normal. They've subconsciously sold to us the abnormal to be the normal. So I've also offered myself now, it's not enough to just stay in the court corridors. I'm now championing the cause of the people. And it's a challenge that I've accepted, that we need to have a new breed of Kenyans coming up to take up leadership positions. So at the right time, I'll also be saying I want to assume a position of leadership. We change the political system and the political players. Ufagia wote. That's what I'm doing. And part of that is to offer civic education and enlightenment to the people of Kenya. And one thing that I'm very focused on is on the question of the Constitution. Fidelity to the Constitution. There's something that Maraga did say in 2017. The first statement he made when they nullified the elections. And he said that the greatness of a nation is measured by its fidelity to its Constitution. Kenya today, we are not applying fidelity to our Constitution. That is why over 80 young people can be killed for exercising their right to demonstrate, and nobody talks about it. That is why young people can be abducted, and we go back to normal for only expressing their right to freedom of expression as guaranteed in the Constitution. So we must change. And I've looked at our Constitution. Specifically, our Constitution, for example, says that we should be holding our presidential and other elections in the 5th year. But subconsciously, we are told to be holding our elections after 5 years. Where did that come from? The wording of our Constitution, the presidential elections shall be held on the 2nd Tuesday in August in the 5th year. So we are in a 4-year presidential term, not a 5-year cycle.
And this is what has given a lot of people a high fever in this country right now. We promulgated this document way back in 2010. We agreed it is a live document. We agreed it is subject to tweaks by way of amendments or by way of just engaging with the public on what it is they feel either needs to be added on to it or, taken away from it. And we were told how that could be done.
Yes.
And at the very top, we were told, at the top of the list of how to do these adjustments, we were told, if it comes down to it, there's even an avenue for how to have another referendum should there be a need for one. All these lists and all these paths were very critically and very loudly put out to Kenyans. Nobody did this math that you've done. How did this slip through? the many, many legal minds I have either encountered, interviewed, or spent time with, and nobody has done that math.
It's simple. You know, when you are developing a constitution, one thing you must do is you first internalize what you are committing yourself to. And you are getting rid of the old. For the old is gone and the new is born. What happened is Kenyans gave unto themselves this new constitution. But did we give up on the hang-ups and provisions of the previous constitution? Because the previous constitution had specifically provided in section 9, a president shall serve for a 5-year term. Specifically provided for, and we had lived through that since 92 to 2007. In fact, 2012. Specifically provided for 5-year terms. Then we move into the new constitution, 2010, that has dropped even that language of a president shall serve for 5 years. But subconsciously, you don't liberate the mind. You are still in a mental slavery to the old constitution. You read the word in the 5th year to mean every 5 years.
But tano zako, tano zangu, 5 for them, 5 for us, in whichever way this country has been profiled, was so loud. It was always 5 this, 5 this,
Yes,
10
but-
this. You and I sit here, we make an agreement, we go before the cameras and we say, Willis, you got 5. After your 5, you gave me my 5.
That is
Nobody ever talks about
because as I've said, it's mental slavery. Bob Marley says, emancipate from yourself from mental slavery. The sounds of freedom. So what we need to do, accept that the old is gone. Then accept the new as your new norm. And the new, you committed to be holding your elections in the 5th year. In fact, the terminology used in Article 136 tells you, do it in the 5th year. So whereas before you had a 5-year term, now we'll count year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Then when we start the 5th year, inside the 5th year, look for the second Tuesday in August. Conduct your elections. Don't have to wait for the end of the 5th year. And based on calculations,
did you surprise any of your learned friends, as you call
of
each other?
course. When you first tell people this, everybody comes to the conversation with a preconceived idea that it's a 5-year term. Then you tell them, no, just read the literal interpretation of this article. They're like, come to think of it, it's actually 4 years term. It's not 5 years. Because in the 5th year, we are conducting elections. So you don't have to wait for the end of the 5th year to conduct elections. And you know, for me significantly, and what is worrisome, is that when we adopt a practice of holding elections outside the provisions of the Constitution, we start doing it in the 6th year. Today, somebody may accept to do it in the 6th year. What will stop a dictator or a despot from saying, why 6th? It should be in the 9th year. Yeah, I don't want to do it in the 6th year. I want to do it in the 9th year. Because it's an accepted practice that doing it in the 5th year has been frowned upon by the people. So my call is to tell Kenyans that, can you go back to your constitution? Apply fidelity to it. Do it in the 5th year. That guarantees you protection today and into the future. Because you do not know which despot this document will land into. And if you start organizing yourselves outside the Constitution, you allow for a stretch. Other people will stretch it beyond your imagination.
You know, I look at our honorable speakers. I think Honorable Kingi has a bit of an easier time with the Senate. I think the honorable speaker, yours truly, as he likes to call himself, Wetangula, I think he has a handful every other time. But though Parliament has been used with this huge word oversight, to the extent that it's been left as a word alone for them to use, the citizen doesn't even care to say that word anymore or to use that word anymore. Because the only time we hear that word is when Parliament and members are defending themselves from one argument or the other. I can understand their pain when the House of Parliament was overrun in the last major demonstration. But it is difficult to argue about the level of discourse you hear around there. Sometimes it's difficult to argue on the sanctity of the House when you hear what they're talking about, to the extent that I get the feeling that what you're saying now is a discussion for people who are dedicated to working towards everything but guided by the Constitution. But our members are looking for something else. They're working on a different project. They're on a different ride altogether. And then there's the citizens who either will fall into somebody's place or they will join somebody's ride, or like we are now hearing, maybe it is time for Jen Zote to fagia wote.
I agree. In fact, we are not going to get any meaningful change in this country with the same crop of leaders, people holding office. I don't even call them leaders, they are politicians. If you look at Parliament, let me talk about when they were breached by our young people. The original breach of Parliament as an institution was by the same members of Parliament when they stopped listening to the people and representing the interests of the people. They became about themselves. When 95% of the memorandum you are receiving from the people are telling you, don't pass this finance bill as it is, we are in economic pain. We are not able to afford even a basic meal for our families. Increasing our taxes, you are pushing us into an abyss. Don't do it. Then, politically, they are told, pitisha raka. And they proceed to do it. So, when we gave unto ourselves the Constitution, and in Article 10 and Article 118, included provisions on public participation. When our courts have said public participation must be qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative to mean you must take into account what the people have told you and use it to influence the decision you are going to make. 95% of memorandum you've received have told you, don't increase our taxes. We can't afford it. And then you ignore it.
This is where it begins to get blurry. At that point, public participation.
Yes.
What's the measure? Who should give the measure? How do we say it has truly happened?
You know, if you look, for example, in terms of, for example, a bill like the finance bill, that you have overwhelming participation by the people. Because that's now quantitative. Many people have come before you and they've made submissions on it. Then prudence requires that you take into account their feelings about it. The finance bill was discussed all over the country. In fact, some Kenyans think this was the first time we had a finance bill in the history of Kenya. But it has always been there. And it was what you call a common and accepted position, popular parlance, that the people don't want this bill as it was proposed. They chose to ignore it. You saw the consequences. The House of Parliament has lost its voice. In fact, they are now just surviving because of this bread-based thing that they have. But in terms of representation, the people are not in Parliament. The people are on social media, X, YouTube, TikTok. That is where the conversation about Kenya is taking place. No one pays attention to what Parliament is passing.
I think that's very sad because I know, because I've seen it, and I've had occasion to spend time with this august house, the members there, and some are dedicated to their work. But there's a whole lot of them who seem to be chasing a very different agenda, and they seem to be piloting a very different plane in a direction only they know. And there's even lack of independence for any of them to come out openly and give clarity.
You see, that's the unfortunate part, because which interests are they representing? Because if our parliament was representing the interests of the people, the kind of debate that we'll be having in that house will be totally different. There will be robust debates that are about the people's interests, the common good of the people. But today, if you go to parliament, they discuss mundane issues. The only time when you hear their voice in loud unison is when they're increasing their per diems, their mileage allowances, defending CDF, which they are superimposing as a fund for themselves. But you never hear them loudly discussing Mwananchi issues. But the Kenyan people have moved on. They've actually, in my view, matured, because they're able now to see through the nonsense that they've been fed with by our parliament. And I do believe that is part of what led to the breaching of parliament last year. But that is not even the end. I'll not be surprised if it happens again, because the old politicians, the legacy politicians, have gone back to their old habits. It seems the lessons of 2024 have not yet sunk in that August House. And it is a challenge to those members of parliament who mean well. Maybe it is time their voices should be heard more and more often. They should be more loud in expressing themselves on the things they believe in. Don't leave it to the wannabes, the ones who good-for-nothing members, to be the one controlling the debate and defining the image of that parliament. As it is, the image of that parliament in the eyes of the Kenyan people is completely tattered. And we must find our footing.
There is a very clear fatigue from the Kenyan citizen.
Exactly.
There's a very clear fatigue of words like a party manifesto, a party idea, or a party desire, or a party dream for the citizen. They're actually saying it. You know what? Keep it. Because people have not really, and I tried this before. I asked people, how many people read this document? You keep shouting and saying, we have cobbled up a fantastic manifesto. And I kept asking, do Kenyans really vote based on what they have read and understood on a party's manifesto? Or are we just still the same? We look for the individual who appeals to whatever of our senses or pockets at that time. That carries the vote.
You know, in the old, I will say so. Manifestos have just been largely documents that are meant for fundraising. A politician comes up with a manifesto to use it to pitch for funds to help him in his campaign. They are never Mwananchi focused documents. So whatever lofty issues are there is not for Mwananchi. It's purely to go and use it to fundraise. But I am in the group of Kenyans who believe that June 25th, 2024 changed the trajectory of politics in this country. Because for the first time in our history, we saw a gathering of Kenyans in the CBD and in over 37 counties in numbers that have never been seen since the history of the earth. We had never seen those numbers. Even Raila Odinga, in his prime, could not marshal the kind of numbers that were on the streets of Nairobi up to the 25th of June last year. Even when the Great Rainbow Coalition was removing Moi from power, the numbers that they were marshalling in the city could not even reach half the numbers that came out on the 25th of June. And the interesting thing about it to me is that there was not a single politician mobilizing. There was no individual or a leader who could claim to have mobilized the Kenyan people across all spheres to come out on the streets. The only clarion call was that it was a quest by a people crying for economic justice, crying for the pains they are feeling in their economy. And the finance bill was just but a trigger that brought them out. And at that point, nobody cared about tribe. Nobody cared about age. The only thing that was relevant in terms of age was that our young people, the Gen Zs, were leading us in one accord to champion, for the first time in our history, a cause for the Kenyan man. Not a cause for a political party, not a cause for a tribe, but a cause for all Kenyans, irrespective of their social status or their tribal affiliations. And I don't want to say that that was for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It must mean something. That we could see that kind of mobilization in the history of the earth here in Nairobi. Never been seen before. And to even breach parliament. That political force is what is going to determine the future of this country. And it will not be a future that is informed by how it has been before in elections, where it was tribe, it was political parties. It's going to be about the voice of the people. The Kenyan people are going to speak. And they will ignore all candidates who are talking tribe, who are talking political parties. They'll simply ask you a question. Tell us how you're going to sort our economy. And this time, having been lied to before, they are going to be very interrogative. They will question people on their promises. When somebody says, I'm going to do bottom up, they will ask you the question beyond the bottom up. I'm going to revive your economy. How? For example, when Raila said, I'm going to give you 6,000 shillings, nobody asked him, how are you going to pay people 6,000 from where? But if such a kind of a promise was to be made in the coming elections, in 2026, it will be a different conversation. He will be asked how. Where will you make the money from? How will you identify the people to be paid? What will be the impact of that on our economy? Kenyans are now more critical. They've been there, done that. They've been lied to. They are now aware. And now they are more involved, even in terms of the nature of engagement with our politics, with our leadership, with our governance. Today, it's far much more than it was in 2022. In fact, if you look at the election of 2022, the winner of that election was the non-voter. The ones who didn't turn out to vote were more than those who voted for the candidates on the ballot. But I do believe in the coming elections, the numbers are going to be phenomenal. I have faith in the true spirit of the Kenyan people.
Talking about the Constitution, and I know I don't want to risk going into the detail of the articles, not because then you will wipe the floor with me on that. No. I'm just trying to stay with the argument that what happened to the part that the Constitution was meant to be a living and growing item, something that could be referred to at any part regarding any state of situation or of our lives within time. It became a document that was pulled out when there was pressure on a favored leader, pressure out of an argument in Parliament. And that's when people would pull out articles and pieces, and within 2 days, the citizens were lost because we do not know the numbers you know about this document. What happened to the part that it was supposed to be a document that went along with us and wasn't meant to be a surprise document? When something happens, somebody jumps up and quotes something and says, this is what the Constitution says.
You know, one thing that when you have a constitution you're supposed to do, you're supposed to inculcate constitutionalism, living by the Constitution. The Constitution should be your daily reference. But in Kenya, many a times we've been treating the Constitution as a document of convenience, that we only make reference to it when it is convenient for the day. And that is why when we did our Constitution, in fact, look at the old Constitution, many Kenyans, some even were born and died without seeing the document that was called the Constitution. It was never readily available. You had to go to the government printer to get a copy. But today, with our 2010 Constitution, it is so liberally available across the entire country. You even go to the internet, you get a copy of the Constitution. So many agencies, bodies have shared it. That was not the position before. So we were living in a case before where the Constitution was a document of convenience to be referred to respond to an issue, a crisis. But today, our Constitution is part of our life every day. But we still have the tendencies of the old, where we do not want to internalize the Constitution as a way of life. And to buttress this point, look at the architecture of our Constitution. It came up with principles. So you go to every chapter of the Constitution, the first article talks about principles of the Constitution. These are principles to inform how you are living. And principles are things you're supposed to be doing every day. The principles of governance and the national values.
My fear was, just quickly on, as you explained that, my fear at the time that this was being articulated and put down on paper for history, my fear was at the time the leading and the loudest voices were making these changes that we are living with the document that is the Constitution we have. They were annoyed, they were hurt, they were mad at President Moi. Even at the point when President Moi said, I am not coming back, I am done. I have had my fill of whatever I was doing for this country. I've had my fill of it. Nimetosheka. I'm going home. Do your thing, okay? I will happily hand over. But it was still driven by a lot of the people who were making decisions and suggestions that were being put down on paper. They were still hating on a president who did not show intention of coming back. So now we are stuck with elements in the Constitution that were actually meant to protect us from a President Moi who wasn't coming back.
But you know, what Moi gave us, I refer to as a constitutional moment. Because also the making of a constitution, in my view, it doesn't just happen. You don't make a constitution every day. The cumulative administration of Moi, if you look at it for the period he had been in office, there had been so many atrocities committed against the people of Kenya that it gave rise to a constitutional moment that we need to have a rebirth. And that rebirth was meant to be in the Constitution. Using the Constitution as a document that overhauls the entire system that had supported Moi. Because in our previous Constitution, for example, detention without trial was an accepted norm. Being arrested and detained at a police station for 1 week was accepted. You can be kept there, they say we are still doing investigation, they'll take you to court after 1 week. Then after 1 week, they say there's nothing, they release you. So that was an accepted norms in our Constitution. But when we got to the constitutional moment to overhaul that document, we said we are going to develop a document that addresses our experiences with Moi. So Moi had to be the reference point, unfortunately. We still had to look back at Moi and say, they did this, so we are making this provision to make sure there is no new Moi who comes to do this. But what we failed to do, in my view, we did not internalize the full dictates of the Constitution. Another thing that I must say, because this process was largely driven or advertised by the political class. The political class got their positions. The positions of president, senator, governor, women rep, member of parliament, MCA, were secured. And we got them. But that was just one part of constitution making. We also got our political rights, the right to freedom of expression, the right to vote, all those fundamental rights in our constitution. But there was one thing that the Mwananchi was agitating for, that he didn't get. Economic liberation. He didn't get his economic independence. So whereas politically our constitution today has given us independence, which also we were seeking, has not been actualized. In fact, in 43 said that gave us the socio-economic rights to be realized progressively.
That is why you are still seeing the next.
Now, 15 years down the line after the new constitution was adopted, it's now time for this progressive realization of economic independence to be actualized. And that was the cry, in my view, last year.
Right.
June 25th was about economic independence. And going forward, these same people, these Kenyans you're seeing, are going to use the tools of the Constitution to achieve their economic independence.
I want you to give me examples of that because, like you said in the beginning, you have advanced the corridors of justice. You're well known there,
Yes.
but you, however, have the realization that the patriot in you now understands to make this work, you have to dabble in the politics of the country. I want to understand how you're going to navigate that area from a well-structured area where you've been playing your trade. This and more as I talk to Willis on our show today. We'll be back after a short break.
Hi everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Status Studio. This is one of the top studios here in Nairobi. Trust me, when I discovered this studio, I haven't been anywhere else. First, their sets, they are pretty amazing. We have the pinks, we have the maroon, we have the blue, blacks, just all beautiful colors. And obviously, you know, they have white because that's what some of us love. So guys, if you'd like to come, do a photo shoot, your wedding pictures, if you want to do birthday parties, anniversaries, graduation, anything, the place to go is Status Studio. It's on Biashara Street, Yala Towers, 5th floor. Trust me guys, all those pictures you've been seeing of me lately, courtesy of Status Studio.
Welcome back. My name is Louis, and you're keeping me company together with Willis here. And we've discussed a range of things which I could not have professional input in because then now I would be I would be working in areas where I'm not a lawyer, I'm not trained on them, but I could understand your issues when you're describing the importance of the country not just having a constitution, but a country learning the whole idea of constitutionalism, you know. This is what we should do.
Yes.
Don't go and throw this thing under the floor. Live with it. But now you know what this document is. You have magically sprung out a new argument, which I'm sure, like I told you, I know your friends ask you, where were you looking? We haven't looked at this thing. And did you sneak in a page? You know, we've not seen this. And I'm sure that they're not yet ready to come and argue publicly about it. It's strange, but here we are. We now know about that. I'm very keen, of course, on saying how, because I don't want you to give up on a new argument, because we've seen a lot of this happen in this country where if it's new, if it's not understood, if it has no traction, put some money on it, and Willis will keep quiet. And Willis will go away. Which now brings us to this area now that you want to dabble in, to now assure yourself and the people of like-mindedness who are saying, now that we know the documentation for us to do this, let us go to the people and ask them to give us the instruments of power. You want to join politics.
Yes, Louis, I was meant to be Jimmy Wanjigi's running mate. I'm the running mate in Safina Party for deputy president. And people ask me this question, why? How do you want to do it? For the last 60 odd years, we've had legacy politicians leading us. It has led us to this. We've seen the summation of what they can do. It is where we are. We can't keep blaming them if we don't offer ourselves to provide alternatives. Because otherwise, you're just letting legacy politicians choose amongst themselves who use the Dwanzi to lead you. Look at our political formations and mutations. If you go back to 2007, all the members of the opposition, let's say 2007 January, all the members of all these legacy politicians, all of them were in one political formation. All of them. Even the ones who were in the previous administration. They were all, in one way or another, part of the Orange Democratic Movement. But today, they pretend that they are competing. What competition? That's why it's so much easier for them to find common ground when their hold on to office is threatened. So much easier. We can compete today, but then the next day, we come together. So as a Safina, we are saying this. You will not progress as a country when you still have these legacy politicians in office. And why? What is our number one stranglehold? What is choking this country most? The problem of this country is the economy. As James Carville used to say, it's the economy, stupid. And what is the number one cause of this economic challenge we are facing? It's called debt. That 70%, more than 70% of your revenue is applied to debt finance. Where do you expect growth to happen? Your government is borrowing from the domestic market at interest rate of 14%. Sometimes it goes even as high as 17%. Borrowing your own money. You're the one who deposits money in that bank. Your same government deposits money in that bank. Then your government goes to that bank to borrow at 14% interest rate, starving you of access to capital. So that when you go to the bank will lend to you at 18%, 20%. They have no appetite to give you money. Why? They prefer to lend to your government. Because they know your government will come back to you to raise your taxes to pay that interest rate that is taken on your money. As Safina Party, we are very clear. We'll stop any domestic borrowing. And we'll open the debt books. Any money that was borrowed without following the laws of Kenya, which provide that debt should only be taken for project finance, development. And 2, there must be parliamentary approval. And 3, the money must be deposited in our consolidated fund, at CBK. If any debt was taken illegally, that the money didn't land in Kenya, didn't fund any project, didn't have parliamentary approval, we will not pay.
Well, these areas are so blurry. Don't you find it daunting? You're saying parliament, you're saying parliamentary approval, you're saying due process. We're looking at this and people when they're doing their thing and we're wondering, how are they? We look at episodes. They should be short as a soap opera, I think, or maybe entertainment television. I honestly have no respect for the so-called vetting processes we see. And the latest of the IEBC were no less inspiring, straight from whoever was heading it. You never got the sense that here comes change, here comes development. I did not get a sense of that, even from the person who was leading what we're trying to chase now with IEBC. This is a daunting field to enter. Where will you get confidence?
You know, I'm getting my confidence from the people of Kenya. I get my faith, my hope is in the people. And that faith is affirmed by June 25th. To see our people rise in those numbers, to speak for their economic liberation, that restores my faith in the people of Kenya. It tells me that it can be done. If I look at what you're up against, these are legacy politicians who've been there for more than 60 years, playing the legacy politics. I will fold my arms and say, I can't. But when I look at how Kenyans rose up and stood up against a system that had oppressed them, that's where my faith is. And I believe we can do it.
But we've been beaten down to a level where the things that are owed to us by our own where we started, by our own constitution. The things that are owed to us by those who hold office, when they do happen to us, we celebrate them like they've done a huge favor. We dance and clap like we are so favored. This has happened to us. We're really good people. They've done a road, they put a pipe, there's water coming, there's a tap running, and we think it is somebody's benevolence.
No,
we never stop to think, where the heck have you been the past 9 months?
You see, Louis, that was the legacy politics. That's what they knew. To come and lie to us, gaslight us, give us fake projects, and they want us to clap for them and applaud them for doing their work.
But don't we?
No. That was the Kenya of old. I'm telling you, analyze Kenyan politics and governance post June 25th, 2024. Don't apply the parameters of your. Because if it was the parameters of your, I'm telling you, with William Ruto and Raila Odinga forming up, I mean, this whole city will now be palpable heat support of the administration. But what you're witnessing is a population that is still restless. The natives are not sitting comfortable. They are still agitating. If you just take another trigger and you see them out. So they have rejected the old.
Let me give you a first test. How will you teach? How will you show it to Kenyans the danger of what we have grown up in? Regional, tribal profiling. That is how it has been in this country.
It's what I'm telling
From
you.
days of then.
It's what I'm telling you, Louis. I say I draw my inspiration from the June 25th movement. On that day, I saw Kenyans. I didn't see a tribe on the streets. I didn't see a political party. And one thing that caught my eye, I was actually in town on that day. I managed to go all the way to the Basilica, at which point some young people told me, no, it is now beyond your age, get into the church, we are finishing the job. I saw young people being shot at, bullets being fired at them. Ordinarily, when you shoot at someone, they run away. This time I was seeing people being shot at, and they were walking towards the bullets. They had given their target that they must enter that parliament. They were being shot at, and they were walking to the bullets. They were walking to receive the bullets. They will go down and walk to the bullets until they got to their target.
Isn't that where we started, Willis? Look at how such a painful scene is being normalized.
No, you don't normalize it to me.
It's being normalized.
No, what had happened is this to me.
Who asked them to come here?
Let me explain to me.
They had no permission
let me
to come
explain
here.
to you why I say it's not normalized. That to me shows determination, the strength of character of our young people, that they will fight for what is right.
No. They're not
And
the ones
even,
I'm challenging.
No, I'm coming so.
Yeah, I'm just
that
saying the ones
even when
who
the
were
system
doing
was
this
shooting
to
at
them.
Yeah, it was wrong for them to do
It's
that.
normal. It's
But-
okay.
So that is what you're up against. A system that believes that when you speak your rights, when you want to live by the Constitution, its response is bullets and batons. But the subject, the people, have now shown resilience and they don't have any fear. They are showing courage in the hands of bullets that we can take it and get to achieve our objective. Now, I will never lose faith in what I witnessed. And that is where
I have
believe.
a friend who was there, even as you continue, and he was in it. And when you look at the arguments about sensitivities, which are supposed to be paramount in a society that is alive even to tradition, alive even to culture, forget about the Constitution, which means they're alive to, this is women, this is children, we don't do this to them, or even in front of them, or we don't include them. Again, normal, as I was telling you. But this guy, when they picked him up, they threw him into a Land Cruiser. The man threw him in, and when he got him there, 4 women, it was 4 women, who wanted to stomp the living light out of him, and telling him, keep your phone on. And if he drinks, you tell your friends you're fine. And that time, he's got a foot here, the other has got a foot in your tummy. It's women beating up their children. And if you look at this person who is taking this order and beating up a child like that, and I wonder, when this Land Cruiser goes home at 5 p.m., how will your life have improved as a policewoman who was stepping on somebody else's child? Will you move from that place where your petitions sometimes are as bad as just shukas?
What happens is this. When you are fighting a system, you'll expect it to fight back. That is their fight back. That's all they know. They will trample on rights, they will brutalize, they'll kill. That's their fight back. And the intention is to break your spirit. That was the intention. When they were shooting at those young people, when they were stomping on your friend, the intention was to break his spirit so that he can cower and go back home. But I do believe even your friend where he is today, he is more resolute than he was even before. Because he knows he was fighting for a cause and he was on the right. He's taken ownership of the Kenyan cause. It was not a tribal conversation. It was not a tribal fight.
Remember the infamous Masengeli?
Yes.
The infamous Masengeli at some point, in very many camera shots, was actually caught smiling. Because he was being asked, who are you chasing? Who is the enemy? And you could see it in his face. Masengeli could not identify the enemy. He could not identify the enemy.
The enemy is your people.
He just knew he's been ordered, get out there and clear the street. And he's just thinking, because he's trained for an enemy.
To follow orders.
Yeah.
And there's an enemy, there's always an enemy.
He can't understand
So
now.
are they going to turn the whole country to be their enemy? So these are fight for economic independence. That is what we are going through. And like in any liberation, you will expect the system that is being upset to fight back. That is their fight back.
It's dirty.
It's dirty. It's been worse before. Look at those who are fighting for the independence of the nation in 1963. What did they go through? Everywhere, even South Africa, look at their experience with apartheid. That happens. It's unfortunate that it happens. But one thing that I love about the modern days is that we have tools of accountability. And even those police officers who are doing this, who are being used by the old political system to to cause these atrocities, they are being documented. They are going to be charged. The beauty of criminal law is there's no limitation of action period. You know, there's a case I'm doing for the people of Kisumu. There was a young baby called Baby Pendo, 6 months old. She was beaten to death in the arms of her mother in 2018 by police officers. Uniformed. Deployed in Nyalenda, a place in Kisumu, slum in Nyalenda, beaten to death. We've reached a point where the commanders in charge of those units which were deployed, in fact, during that period, over 60 people were killed. The commanders in charge of those units, there are 12 of them, commanders, both police and prisons, who are deployed. The commanders are being charged for crimes against humanity. Acts of murder, rape.
Willis, please assure me you will not allow this to be normalized.
It can never. I've given out my life to make sure that I will use that Baby Pendo case as a test case.
That cannot be normalized.
The police commanders must take plea. Once they take plea and they are convicted, that standard will be applied to even these ones who killed our young people last year. The commanders responsible. Masengeli may laugh today, but he was a commander. He is in command of the units. In fact, in the Baby Pendo case, those commanders have even appealed. They filed a petition challenging their prosecution. Do you know what they are saying? I was just but a mere OCS. The person responsible was the IG and the deputy IG. They are throwing the others under the bus, saying, yes, we agree it was done by our units, but I'm not the one in command of the police. It is the IG and the deputy IG. But they're saying, no, for today, you're the ones who have been charged. Take plea, let's proceed. So Masengeli can laugh all he wants today. But it's being documented. The atrocities have been documented. They've been shared liberally across the globe. Don't be surprised if tomorrow you hear a warrant of arrest against a policeman here in Kenya being issued by a court in Europe. Yeah, there's now what we call universal jurisdiction, where if what appears to be crimes against humanity are committed in any part of the world, some countries have said, we can try you even if you're not a national, because we have a duty to protect humanity.
I personally found it, to be plainly honest, I found it ridiculous, given the things that we're trying to normalize in this country now. Things like those, abductions, extrajudicial killings, such behavior, killing children, trying to normalize that. And then we want to go and lead the AU as a country. That's the example we want to give to Africa. We're the country that does this, and it's normal in our country. Don't
Now
look
we
at
want
that.
to take it to the continent.
Look beyond that. Listen to us. We talk. This is what we're good at. We've got a whole team of technocrats who've employed. They give us scripts endlessly. We know their lines beginning to end.
Do you know, at the AU, one thing that people don't understand, Kenya was the laughing stock. At the AU, I spoke to some of my friends who are in Africa and diplomacy. And what they were telling me is Kenyans are trying to export their bad manners to the continent. Their domestic politics, they want to bring it here. Ultimately, there's always what we call the lobby on the floor of the vote. That lobby was against Kenya. They're saying this is purely local politics, and Kenyans, they've just killed the young people. The issue of Gen Z was influencing some of the votes. These are a repressive regime that now wants to claim a seat on the table. So amongst other factors that have affected the performance of the Kenyan candidate was what you're saying, the abductions and the extrajudicial killings of our young people.
Economic independence, another example. So we've opened our borders. The office at the Hill says this will improve our economic empowerment, and our borders are open. Has anybody done the stats so far to see which countries are benefiting from Kenya's open borders?
You know, even that thing of open borders, is it even well informed? What does it mean? You know, we have a situation where the executive makes roadside declarations that are not informed by any policy consideration. Because if you ask me, if you are going to open our borders, it will be a structured engagement with reciprocating countries that is informed by an economic interest. I'll give you an example. What other Safina party will do? If you go to Marikiti now in the afternoon, the market is closing. Fresh produce, a kg of tomatoes that was selling for 200 kgs, now they're selling at a throwaway price. It's perishable. They need to close the market. This woman can't carry the vegetables back to Meru. So they have to find a way of quickly disposing of it. But Lagos has 15 million people. They import the bulk of their vegetables from Europe and America. Here, vegetables are going to waste. Why can't we have a discussion with Nigeria to give us landing rights of our vegetables in Lagos? So every morning as some are going to Mirikiti, we have some going to JKIA. So that we have a new market of 15 million people that you can land your vegetables to. Look at the entire value chain, just from the farm, the packers, the transporters, the aviation workers, that you are going to create jobs for, and you have a market.
Let me give you more homework as a challenge. Out of observation, because this is true, we now have a lot of discussions going on, but we know there's evidence of this, and I'm sure you can find it. This is what you do. This is your day at the office. There are countries that have actually bought spaces within our country to do their farming, because they are not farming in their countries. They are farming, and they're taking away their produce, and they are packaging their produce, and we are buying it in our supermarkets. They're taking fish, we are buying it
as fillet
from them.
Yes.
It's normal. I told you the magic word for me. I can't get it out of my head. I'm just
Normal.
thinking normal changed. I woke up
It's a
one
new
morning
normal.
and normal changed from what my
What you
English
do
teacher
is-
told. My English
It's a
teacher
new
taught me
normal.
something else. That's normal in Kenya now.
It's true. Look even at coffee. Our coffee is packaged in Dubai. And they are sold by, I mean, even tea, sorry. Packaged in Dubai and sold there. These tea bags you use.
How will you attack this as a party?
No, as we believe as a political party, as Safina, we believe anything that we produce, the value addition must be done here. You don't export as a raw material.
And how
Do the
quickly,
value
how
add.
quickly will you act before you find more than 3/4 of this country has been mortgaged?
You know, the
People
beauty, the
own
beauty,
this country in bits and
the
pieces
beauty of this,
all over the world.
the beauty of this is we have regular elections. And the time when we manage to get into office, it's our intention to start immediately. Our interventions should be focused on only one thing: Kenya first.
Who owns Kenya?
That's the question. The people of Kenya owns Kenya. One thing that you're not talking about, that I must tell you, is this new push towards green energy. And in the fullness of time, this is going to be the new oil. Africa is positioned as the new frontier of green energy. Kenya has the potential to produce 500,000 megawatts of green energy. What that means, Kenya can become what Saudi Arabia is in the oil world today, when the potential is fully exploited.
I don't hear that discussion.
But no one is, in Safina Party, you are discussing it. And you're very clear how you're
Why
going to
aren't you
achieve it.
loud enough?
We are, Louis, that's why I'm here with you.
Then we should have started talking to you earlier because I don't hear this
should invite
discussion.
me more often.
I don't hear this discussion where I have Kenya Brewery of Standards and I walk into a supermarket and every breaking object
It's important.
has a stamp.
Imported item. You are a supermarket.
Not just
Kenya is
imported,
turned into a
it
supermarket.
has a stamp of it has taken through the test, it is suitable, it
Only
can be
cares about
sold.
the stamp. So you've turned your country into a supermarket for other countries. But when I talk about energy, for example, why that is very important, I need to understand our production, megawatts, we are producing 3,000 megawatts. Our consumption is 2,700 megawatts. So you have a negligible surplus, 300. Even if you wanted to attract a major manufacturer to come to Kenya, they need 3,000 megawatts for their plant and machinery. You don't even have the capacity.
Why are we buying so much power?
Because your power is unstable.
Why don't we know who we're buying it from?
That is what I'm saying. Your supply is unstable. So you have to supplement.
Why don't we even know
So we
who we're
need to
buying
produce.
it
Because to Kenya today, the legacy politicians, to them, government is about deals. What am I making today? What's convenient? What's the normal? I can as well buy it from this X. I have a deal. I make my cut and I go away. It's not about the people. As a Safina, we believe our intervention should be about the people's interests. What is in the best interest of the people? If I had time, I would have told you, for example, what our proposal is on the energy sector. We believe if we are going to harness green energy in this country, it should be owned by the locals in that area. Whoever has the technology and the capital to build it, it should give fractional ownership to the local community. So you get the borders, the women's, the circles, whatever. They own part ownership of your venture. Give them 45% of your shares.
One time, one time back in history, the energy you're talking about, I remember visiting Mumia's sugar company at its prime. And they were working at such a level, they had energy to sell to Kenya Power.
To the grid, yes.
And they were told no. So even when we can do it, those who thought to do it before were told no. In fact, they had said, why don't we supply the local area?
They don't know.
And have a discussion.
There's only one because
this is all a local arrangement.
We only have one distributor of power in the country so far. We'll do away with that. Why should we have one distributor of power? That's Kenya Power. It's a monopoly. That served 1980s. We're in 2025. We should liberalize. If anybody can produce power cheaply, affordably, safely, Why should we be able to sell to the national grid?
Not let go.
No. That
they
is why.
are so deeply rooted.
No.
They even affected our education system. How many of us went through books that had been redacted, that had been edited regarding the history of this country? And now when people are coming and speaking and telling us the truth about how some people were actually involved in the emancipation of this country from colonialists, we are surprised. We don't even know that the names were mentioned.
You know, Louis, what I'm telling you that you need to remember is this. The old is gone and the new is born. We're in a new Kenya. And the beauty about it is that the people of Kenya are taking the fight. They are the ones taking charge of their country. I am not saying that that system is not entrenched. It's entrenched.
Deeply.
And it is vicious. It will fight back. It wants to perpetuate itself. But unfortunately, the power that is coming with the force of the people, they will not survive. In fact, what we should worry about is that they are very also, even them, they are very attuned to changes. Is they are going to try to find their way to emerge as your new liberators, to find accommodation in this new system.
Are you telling me they will suddenly fix health in fear? Out of fear, they will suddenly fix health. Out of fear, they will suddenly arrive at, okay, at least primary school level, it's free education, and children will have meals in their schools, which up to now, I hear when the math is done, it is possible, yet it is not being done.
Let me tell you, let me talk about school meals. I did the math on what Nairobi County is spending on free lunch every day. I want to tell you how ridiculous legacy politicians are. Do you know that budget is around 1.7 billion per year?
How much?
1.7 billion per year. That is a comfortable 8 billion Kenya shillings lying at the Ruai sewage plant after 5 years. What's the impact of that? In Nairobi alone, we have 170 public facilities, schools. 170. We have 3,500 plus informal education centers. So this intervention is not even targeting the majority in Nairobi. But you're going to spend 8 billion in 5 years and dump it at the Ruai sewage plant. If you are serious about
feeding the
kids or bringing change to the people, you will have said, our first intervention should be, let's expand the capacity of the public primary facilities. And you go to a school, go to Karen Primary School, Karen C. You'll find one classroom has 80 kids. The head teacher will tell you, I have no capacity to take even one extra kid. Even if I wanted to. There's no capacity. So
even with that dilemma, they do have a roof over their heads. But now again with normalization, children are sitting under the tree.
Yes.
Volunteers are struggling to teach them.
Yes. So what I'm saying.
Guess what? There's a nearby church that wants a palatial house.
Church building. We have the money to build it.
And you know, I mean, I'm no preacher, but I do know widows and children, orphans especially, get priority. I do not know of any of these churches that has come out to boast of the fact that this will now go to this program they've been planning to do in the locality for the widows and the orphans and then for the children. I don't hear that.
They don't talk about
I just hear a celebration of acceptance and political happiness.
So, taking you back to my conversation, if we had committed 8 billion shillings on infrastructure development in primary schools in Nairobi, even say I'm spending the first 2 years on infrastructure development, I'm going to spend 4 billion to do a massive infrastructure development in the city. Then all these kids in informal schools will have space in the public facilities. Then now you can roll out your feeding program. But if the intention is to make money, you don't care about the facilities you're providing. All you care about is, I want to quickly buy this kitchen, put up this structure, and yet, you know, this money about food, how will you account for food? You want to account for it, go to Ruai sewage. It's the easier way to loot public funds. Does it even integrate the Nairobi families, the women of the slum areas, the vulnerable women, for example, to integrate them It was an intervention to help the people, integrate the women of Nairobi to become part of the group that provides this program. So they can also benefit from these public coffers. They pick women from the locality. In my village, for example, we have a local program, feeding program for kids. And these villagers coming together, collecting money, some providing produce. They get local labor, and we feed our kids in the village for the whole school term.
This is a local intervention.
This is a purely
not
local,
a county
not a
intervention.
county. This is a purely local intervention.
Which actually makes me ask you the same question. I know I keep asking this because I'm yet to receive a suitable answer. Does Kenya need 47 counties?
I would say Kenya needs 47 counties. What we need to work on is the counties need to make meaning to Kenyans.
What's stopping them now?
At this point, in all fairness to the county governments, I'll tell you this. We set up the counties, but we held back adequate funding to the counties. 85% of the money is still at the national level. So the interventions by the counties are limited.
Do you trust how they deploy their funds?
I trust a
in the
county.
counties?
I trust a county more than I trust a national government. Why? Because at the county, you have in terms of proximity to the people, it's far much closer. How many times have you seen people storming their governors' residence or offices to demand for service? And the governor, because he's politically responsible or accountable to the people, he quickly responds.
What
So
I don't understand
for
is every
national-
time I see film on this, I see there's an issue. There is a situation either with a school or with the children, or there's a situation of even violence or cattle rustling, and I see the locals speaking. This is a county that has a county government that trickles down to the MCAs, all that put together, but the only thing I hear them saying at the end of their lamentations, tunomba serikali.
Because you'll find
Why do they not see that there is
a
immediate
government.
help?
Let's speak, for example, on schools. Infrastructure development is still a function of the national government. Tell me who is better placed to improve the infrastructure of a school in Siaya, where I come from, between the national government and the county government. The national government may not even be able to tell the infrastructure needs of a school deep down in Alego. Or by the time they get to know it, it will take approximately 1 year to even just discuss the kind of intervention that is required.
And what actually, right there, what does that make of the principals, the headmasters who are told, do not dare send a learner home, yet no money is given to you?
No capitation is
What
given
do
to
they
you.
do now? Do they become brokers? Do they start looking for Shylocks?
That is why I tell
Do
you.
they do deals with the man? What is a principal to do in this situation?
It's very crazy. I was talking to some head teachers and they're telling me their experience. You have kids in school, they have to feed, capitation has not been released. In fact, one of them told me, if you go to the local center, no market woman wants to see me. Because I owe so much money in this particular center. I have to find another center. Because they have to go and borrow now from the market to feed the kids. Some are forced to close school early.
And the Hill doesn't care.
They don't care. This system has not worked. We have to overhaul all this. These legacy politicians, they all have to go. We must create a new system that is about the common good of the people. People interest, not legacy politicians.
As we wind up, tell me if I can help, or if you can have a platform, what would you like us to say, okay, this is what we are going to shout about, given the platform. What can we help Safina shout about in terms of importance? What do you rate it?
The most important thing that I will wish is amplified is the economic quest of the people of Kenya. We have to do an economic liberation of our people. That's all we care about. And if we can maintain the conversation from where the Gen Zs had left it, making our political agitation about an economic issue, not tribal issue, we'll have saved this country. That is the only quest I can have from you, Louis. and hold.
Convince me. I'll do my best to say it. I just want to understand that you will say the things you're saying and stick with them.
Let me give
because
you, let me give you
this
something.
all dispensation fighting knows only one trick at the end of the day.
They lie.
If they can't beat it,
They
if
join
they
it.
can't confuse it, if they can't trash it, they buy it.
And to give you an example, when we finally unveil our campaign platform, there's one thing that I always say. Our campaign will be about power in the hands of the people, not a politician. I've told you that we not pay Odia's debt. Your taxes are increased every year to pay Odia's debt. VAT on fuel is 16% today. What are we going to do as a FINA party? We are very clear. VAT on fuel must come down to 6% or even take it out completely. So we'll have a commitment to the Kenyan people. VAT on fuel must come down to 5%. Who pays VAT? It's the people. When we make a commitment to you that don't pay VAT at 16%, pay it at 5%. From this day when we're in office, pay it at 5%. Who computes their ETR machines to pay VAT? It's the people. Our campaign will be about giving power in the hands of the people.
Then please assure me that at least you will honor me with statements like, Willis, you said this, okay, what next? But I don't want to say, Willis, this is what you said, and now you're talking different. What changed?
No, what I'm saying, Louis, is this. I'll give you an example of the VAT one. The VAT is paid by the individual. It's the individual who goes to pay VAT. So I'll be telling you, as we've told you, don't wait for us. You, when you are paying for an advertible item on fuel, take away from 16%, pay at 5%. That's power in your hand. You're not waiting for a politician to come and tell you now from this date do it. No. We campaigned on a platform of VAT at 5% on fuel. When you are doing your returns, pay only 5%. You don't have to wait for me. It's power in your hands. We are saying police officers, OCPDs should be elected by the people. The way we elect to health center local committees. The OCPD should be elected by the people. So that we avoid against these police killings, the atrocities we're witnessing. Because if you are the OCPD in charge of an area, you've been elected by your people. Are you going to deploy your policemen to kill your people? You come from the locality, you may be a civilian or a policeman, they know you. Our manifesto or our ideas are revolutionary.
Don't say manifesto. That
Let me call it our ideas. Let me drop it. Our ideas, we are a revolutionary political party. Even when I'm saying that we'd hold our elections as per our constitution in 2026, that's revolutionary. We are uprooting the old thinking. We are coming up with new thinking.
And I should pay attention, that's what you're saying.
Pay attention, and we welcome you to Safina. Thank you, Louis.
It's been a pleasure, Willis.
Nice meeting you, my brother.
Thank you for spending time with us, viewer. This is Willis, well-versed in the law, and now telling you his prospects of going into politics and the politics that will appeal to you. I always say at the beginning and end of the show, it's your choice. I help you make a better choice, but it's your choice. See you next time.